Okay, so we're going to just now start creating our actual movable character within UE4. So just a note, I have taken in this custom character, but you can. This is exactly the same process for bringing in an existing mixed mode character. You're just exporting the model and the skeleton. What Unreal will do, it'll automatically make a skeleton if it finds a humanoid shape, and it'll also give you a physics asset, which at this point you don't need to worry about, and also the skeleton. This is actually the skeleton which we can apply our animations to, because it'll recognise it's all from the same model. So what was I doing? I was going to make a blueprint class. So we know what blueprints are, or we should know what blueprints are. We've done a few exercises, I believe. So blueprints are a container for all the functionality you need within a particular object. And blueprints are great because they contain visual scripting, which means that you can control things visually with by connecting up nodes to create functionality. So you don't need to be writing in stupid semicolons for hours and tearing your hair out, even though I haven't got any. You can just effectively put together visually the functionality for whatever you want to do. So I mean, it doesn't have to be a character. In this case, we're going to make a character. You know, you might want functionality for a torch, so you'd have like a torch in a dungeon. So you might have a static mesh of a stick. You might have a flame particle system, and then you just connect the two of them together in your blueprint, and effectively you can just activate that whenever you need to. Anyway, shut up, Andy. We want to make a character. Yes, let's call it Lara BP. Okay, so there's a few little things we want to do with this. So double click on this as we always do. I just need to have a quick look at my notes. And the other thing I'm going to do first actually is that this will open up whenever you open up Unreal. This project settings window will open up. So this gives you, this is just all the settings for your project. You know, self-explanatory because it's called project settings. Well done, Andy. So you effectively, there's lots of things you'll end up having to fiddle with as you start making proper games in this particular area of Unreal. But in this case, we want maps and modes. So this gives you your editor startup map and the default map that it loads when you first open up Unreal. So we don't want to fiddle with these are fine. But what we do want to fiddle with is the HUD class, and we want the, sorry, not the HUD class, the default pawn class. So because we have got the third person game mode, it defaults to the third person character. So because we're going to be replacing the third person character, we want to change this to Lara, and it'll just automatically save this. So this means now that instead of in the third person game mode, instead of defaulting to the third person character, which is this, it'll try and default to Lara BP, which is this. So we need to do a few things here. So double click on this, we've got Lara BP. So if we click on, so just to walk you through, when you've got a character blueprint, this is where your actual mesh lives, and so we currently don't have a mesh in here, so we need to load in a mesh. Hang on. But one of the first things we want to do is on your pawn, we want to turn this off. Okay, use controller rotation yaw, and this is to do with when you're actually rotating the character with your mouse. It just causes issues without going into too much detail. You could leave it on if you want to see what happens. It doesn't cause any massive issues. It just causes the camera to go really weird if all the controls to act up. It just becomes confusing to control is what I'm actually trying to say. So if we go to character movement, we haven't actually got a character in here, so maybe I should do that first. So I need to add a mesh in here, so give me a second. Yeah, so it's really just a case of going down to the character mesh, and then you can choose Lara T pose. So we want her to fit within the bounding box. So the minute so this is your collision box for your character, and collision boxes for characters normally are capsules, or all the time I've been developing in games I've never seen anything but a capsule. But a capsule means that it doesn't get snagged on geometry within your level. So if you had a full complex set of collision on this character, the arms etc. may get caught on the environment. It's an example being the Amazing Trespasser game, which play it if you get a chance, it's hilarious. Okay, so stop rambling, and what I want to do is this big blue arrow is shown as the position that the character is going to be moving forward in. So this is the forward movement axis. So we can see that Lara's facing the wrong way, so let's just let's try. No, that's silly. It's actually a rotation, isn't it? It needs to be minus 90. Okay, so she's facing the right way now. I've actually kind of, that's helped a bit because I've just moved her into. So if we've got we can see we've actually got the character selected. It's got a yellow outline. So if we go to, I just pressed R there. So E is rotate, R is a shortcut for scale, and so we can actually just scale her down, and then press W, shortcut for move. We can move her up. She's still enormous. You know, if you want to actually get it lined up really properly, you can go to your orthographic views. So I can just see this capsule there. And what I want to do is I want to reduce that. I can't actually. So if we put the lock on scale here, I can just do it a little bit more finely. I'll just put this lock on, and then I can just, whenever I adjust one of them, it'll adjust all of them. So just down we go, and then back to W. If I can get it to go back to W, it's not going back to W. It's not going back to W. It is going back to W. Thank you. I seem to have the grid snap on for some reason. I pressed the grid snap. Okay, so I've got her, she's in position there. She's inside the capsule. It's relatively, she's fitting in relatively well. I mean, you can be a little bit more precise, but that should be fine for what we're doing. She looks quite uncomfortably bald, actually. Anyway, okay, so so I just want to increase the walk speed. So I've gone to character movements. This controls all the values for all the default character movement settings. And these are all built into your UE4 default mannequin. So walking at the minute, I think I want to move the walk speed to 800. Let's have a look. Yeah, that's jumping, falling. That's walking. So the speed's currently at 600. So I think we've just we've previously tested this, and when you're importing a new character, 800 makes it a little bit more sensible. And also we want to have a look at rotation settings, and we want to orient rotation to movement. So that, I think that's just helping with the kind of tank control, so that when you are moving the character will rotate as you move. So again, you can fiddle with this if you want. This is just something we've done from a test previously, having done this a few times. So yeah, that's all good. So next up, we want to basically add a component up here. So we need to add a camera to this character. Let's just compile it again. We need to add a camera to this character. So let me just add a component and then just put in spring arm. Okay, so yes. So I also want to add a camera onto this. Oh, hello. So onto the spring arm, I want to add a camera. Just the camera, and that needs to be attached to the spring arm. The spring arm really needs to move kind of, normally it gives you a little viewpoint port for the camera, but it's not in this case. Okay, so I think that's correct. I might need to, it's connected to the mesh. Okay, I think that's okay. Okay, so let's keep going forward. Hopefully that's okay. Okay, so next up we want to go back to the main screen, and we want to make a animation blueprint. So this is what is going to control all the animation for our Lara characters. So we're going to make it out of the Lara T pose. So it's just basically, this is the name of the skeleton, and it should default have been called stupid BP. Okay, so the next thing we actually want to do is we want to start nicking stuff from, oh yes, sorry, the other thing I want to do is, so this is the animation blueprint that controls all the animation. That's good. What we want to do is we want to make sure that this mesh is using the blueprint we've just made. Oh, hello. So this is why you've got to name everything, otherwise you'll never find it. Okay, so this means that the mesh, the skeleton, everything is now using the animation blueprint we've created. It's all matching up. It understands everything fits together, and you have to go through, this is quite a lengthy procedure to make sure it recognizes everything in its right place, as Radiohead might say. Right, so we've done all that. I want to go to the third person character, so if we go to the third person character, so this is the existing character we've got here, and what I'm going to do is, this is all the functionality on the existing functionality on that character. This character here, we've just opened up the blueprint, and if we go to the event graph, which is where your core functionality is, you've got your viewport tab, which is your little fella. Then you've got your event graph, which is all your basic input. It tells you here, this is your gamepad input, this is your VR, which obviously we don't need. This is your VR, your movement input. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to left click, hold it down, press Control C, and then really naughtily I'm going to go back to Lara BP, and I'm going to go to my event graph on the Lara blueprint. So what we're doing here is we're just copying functionality, which, you know, at some point you will understand that functionality in the next 3 years, we hope. So what I've done is I've just pasted that in. There's going to be some problems here, so we'll note that base turn rate is giving me an error, and base lookup rate is giving me an error, and that's because these are variables that exist within the third person character blueprint. So these exist here. These are variables that exist. These are effectively numbers that this character is using to work out how far it's looking up and how far it's turning. These are just simple numbers that it's using in its calculations, which, you know, you'll understand. You probably understand it now, to be honest with you. But so when we copied and dragged this across into my blueprint, what's happened is we haven't got the variables set up. So what I need to do is I need to just make some variables. So we can add a variable, and what will happen is it will give us automatically default to a boolean, which you don't really need to know what that is at the minute. A boolean is effectively a switch. It's like on or off, but that's a type of variable. So I want to make it a float, which is a number that it can be a decimal point within it. So it's not, 1, 2, 3. It's 1.1. You can have infinite numbers in between. It's not a finite number. There's a much better description of that, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Right, so it's a float. Yes, let's call it. Make sure you've got the capitals in the same place. Let's call it base space turn not to n. So the thing is as well, any variables there'll be capitals in them, and you want to make sure you've got the capitals and the spaces in exactly the right place. If it doesn't recognise exactly the same name, it'll go mad. Base turn rate, so if I could, well, let me just do the other one as well. So I'm just going to add another variable, in this case base lookup rate. So let's just stupid thing, base lookup rate. So these are the two variables. Let's compile now. It's still giving me an error. So have they got spaces in them? Okay. Okay, so it didn't have spaces in them. It's just me being stupid. So yeah, you don't normally put spaces in your variables, but let's just delete out the stupid spaces that I put in. Okay, so it compiles fine now. So as soon as you compile, it will give you, each of these variables now has a value, a default value, which I don't know whether they're supposed to default to 0. It doesn't give you a default value until you compile. And compiling is basically the computer checking through all the processes and make sure that they're all valid, which is why we've got a couple of faults up there. So I think we've done the base turn rate. So the next thing we want to do is we basically want to go, the next elements we're going to be doing are the animation graph. So if we go to file, save all, and what we're going to do next is we're going to get all the animation data out of this fella and paste it onto, well, let's actually do that now. So that's not the animation. I'm just looking for the third person. Keep clicking on the same thing. So third person and MVP. So I want to just get the event graph out of the third person and MVP, and do the same thing. So this is this character, the UE4 mannequin. This is all the default settings. Press Ctrl C, all the default settings for his animation functionality. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go to our Lara animation. Okay, and then we'll go to the event graph, not the anim graph. And what I'll do is I will paste that in, and we're going to be missing some. We've got speed, and these are two variables we need, and these are floats as well. So let's add a couple of variables. Whoa, did it this time? Is in air. So this is a variable just telling the computer whether or not this character is jumping or on the ground, which is quite useful for finding out a variety of. It's basically really useful for knowing where the character is. So you know, if you're falling, for instance, then you are in the air, which means you can't do certain moves because you're falling. You can't suddenly start running forward. So this is an important variable which is quite common in character controllers or animation blueprints. Shut up, Andy, and do the other variable, which is speed. And obviously speed is basically just there to tell us, actually these two need to be floats. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Well, okay. It sometimes takes hours when it starts doing this. Yes. Yeah, okay. I thought we might do that. Where did I go? Lara and MVP. And speed. Let's change that to float. Yes, just gone to a different screen to confuse us. Let's see if that compiles. It doesn't compile. Is in air. Okay. Oh, it's not a capital. you go, you see, that's a good example of it's a good example of flirt. Do you know what? I'm going to delete these two out and make them again, because otherwise yeah. Have I just broken it all? I think I have. Okay, so let's just paste that back in again, and this time we'll do it properly. We'll make a new variable, make it a float. Yes, thanks is in watching the capitals this time. Yes, and then another variable, it's a float. Yes, and this time it's going to be speed. Oh, sped. Everything's good there. Yes, and then let's compile, and it's still giving me an error. Okay, let me just have a look at why this is happening. The reason that's happening is because is in air is actually I'm just back at the UE4 mannequin blueprint, so it's actually a boolean. So I need to go to my Lara anim BP and make is in air a boolean. As I say, which is a switch. So it's a switch because it's telling you, you know, 1 means yes, she's in air, she is in the air. 0 means no, she isn't in the air. So cause, do that confusing thing again, and then is in air this time works. Okay, so we've compiled that. We've nicked all of this. So in theory, we should have a character that works. So as in we should be able to move the character around. So what I mean here is that we've got a speed here, and we've got is in air, and we've got pawn on is valid. So if I just go to Andy and then go to and then save all, and then we start the level. So okay, it's not doing that. Let's have a okay, so we're still defaulting to that character. Okay, so I've actually just deleted out the UE4 controller, so it's not defaulting to that. We've got a game that's actually network player start, which we don't want. So yeah, so that's our character now in the game. It's still doing something funny with the camera, so I think I need to check my tick boxes. But anyway, she can now move, but we haven't got any of the animations in, so that's the next step.